Welcome to Traoré's Stand, the unfiltered truth about Africa's new frontier. Something is happening in West Africa that the mainstream media in the West simply refuses to cover with honesty. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the man who has become the face of a new African revolution and the current chairman of the Alliance of Sahel States, has just made his most defiant move yet. He has officially turned his back on Ivory Coast, a longtime neighbor and a key stronghold for Western interests, to forge a historic and strategic bond with Ghana. This is not just a change in trading partners or a simple diplomatic shift. It is a total rejection of the old colonial status quo that has kept Burkina Faso and its neighbors in economic chains for generations. Ibrahim Traoré is redrawing the map of the Sahel in real time, and the world is starting to realize he is not playing by the old rules anymore. What if I told you that a single handshake between two African leaders in a small room could actually threaten the very stability of the global financial system that you rely on every day? Could this sudden pivot toward Ghana be the final nail in the coffin for Western influence in the Sahel? And why does this move suggest that the era of the almighty dollar's dominance in Africa might be coming to a sudden and violent end? You need to watch this until the very last second, because what happens in Ouagadougou today will inevitably impact the price of your goods and the security of your investments tomorrow. For far too long, our brothers and sisters across the African continent have been treated like strangers in their own land, forced to beg for the crumbs of their own vast resources while foreign powers grow wealthy off their labor and soil. Have you ever felt the sting of a betrayal so deep that it forces you to burn every bridge behind you just to find a single path to dignity? Ibrahim Traoré is no longer asking for permission to be free. He is taking it. His decision to dump Ivory Coast for a trusted partner like Ghana is a cry for justice that echoes from the dusty streets of Burkina Faso all the way to the heart of the diaspora in America. This is no longer just a local dispute over ports or transport routes. This is a high-stakes chess match between a small, courageous nation and the global giants who are terrified of losing their grip on the African continent. If Traoré succeeds in making the Alliance of Sahel States truly independent, the dominance of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency could face its greatest challenge yet. But why is the West so terrified of this new alliance? And what exactly did Ghana offer that made Traoré walk away from decades of history? We are going to uncover the secret strategy that is making Washington nervous and could change the way we see global power forever. If you believe that Africa deserves to stand on its own feet and that the truth should be told without a Western filter, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to join our growing community of truth seekers. To my family in the diaspora and all those who believe in a new Africa, leave a comment below with the words, "Africa Rise," to show the world that our pride and our voice cannot be silenced. To understand why Captain Ibrahim Traoré made such a radical move, you first have to understand the geography of survival. Burkina Faso is a landlocked nation, a beautiful, sun-drenched land that relies entirely on its neighbors to reach the sea. For decades, the road through Ivory Coast was the lifeblood of the country. It was the gateway to the world, the path for fuel, medicine, and every single imported good that kept families alive. But that lifeline eventually became a noose. Imagine being a father like Amadou, a 48-year-old small-scale trader from Bobo-Dioulasso. For 20 years, Amadou worked until his hands were calloused and his back was bent, trying to bring simple household goods across the border from Ivorian ports. But recently, he watched his entire life savings vanish because of political games played in high-rise offices in Abidjan. He faced sudden, unexplained fees at the border. His trucks were held for weeks without reason, and he watched his perishable goods rot in the heat while officials turned a blind eye. This isn't just a story of a business loss. It is a story of a man over 35 who spent his youth believing in brotherhood, only to realize that his neighbor was being paid to keep him poor. Amadou represents millions of Burkinabés who have realized that their survival was being traded for Western approval. Ivory Coast has long been seen as the crown jewel of French influence in West Africa. It is the fortress of the CFA franc and the primary outpost for interests that don't always align with African sovereignty. When Ibrahim Traoré and the Alliance of Sahel States decided to stand up for their own security, Ivory Coast didn't act like a brother. Instead, they acted like a gatekeeper for a system that many in the diaspora now call the modern-day plantation. Many of our brothers and sisters living in cities like New York, Houston, or London, highly educated professionals who still send money back home every month, have seen this pattern before. They see their home countries being squeezed by neighbors who prioritize the stability of the euro or the US dollar over the lives of African children. These intellectuals, the African diaspora, are watching the screen today with a mixture of anger and hope. They know that when Ivory Coast delays essential shipments or supports sanctions that hurt the common man, they aren't just following regional policy. They are participating in a calculated effort to starve the revolution in the Sahel. This is the big chess game that the media rarely explains. Burkina Faso wasn't just looking for a new port. They were looking for an exit strategy from a centuries-old trap. Traoré saw that the more he pushed for independence, the more the leadership in Ivory Coast tightened the screws. It became a question of justice versus injustice. Is it just for a neighbor to host foreign military bases while your own people are fighting for their lives against terrorists? Is it just for a neighboring country to use its coastal advantage to bully a landlocked nation into submission? For Traoré, the answer was a resounding no. He realized that as long as Burkina Faso was tethered to a partner that answered to Paris or Washington, the people would never truly be free. The betrayal wasn't just a single event. It was a slow, painful realization that the brotherhood of the past was being replaced by a cold, calculated subservience to outside powers. The reaction from the West has been one of deep anxiety. Washington and Paris are watching this rift with growing concern because they know that if Burkina Faso can successfully bypass Ivory Coast, the entire structure of their influence in West Africa begins to crumble. They see the emotional enemy rising, not an enemy of the people, but an enemy of the unfair systems that have drained Africa of its wealth for centuries. There is a price for this defiance, and Traoré knows it. The risk of total isolation, the threat of more severe sanctions, and the danger of orchestrated chaos are all on the table. But the cost of doing nothing, the cost of staying in a marriage where you are being poisoned, is much higher. This is about the price of gas in your car and the security of global trade routes. If the Sahel closes its doors to those who seek to exploit it, the world's economic map changes overnight. As this tension grows, we see the global players taking sides. While the West issues warnings and speaks of regional instability, other powers like Russia and China are watching for an opening. But more importantly, the people of Africa are speaking up. They are tired of being the pawns in someone else's game. They are tired of seeing leaders who look like them but act for someone else. This is why the shift to Ghana is so monumental. It isn't just about moving cargo. It is about moving the heart of the nation toward a partner that respects the dignity of the African man and woman. It is a bold declaration that Burkina Faso would rather walk a new path alone than stay on an old road that leads to a dead end. I want to pause right here and ask you a very serious question. Do you believe that a country should have the right to choose its friends, even if it makes the world's superpowers uncomfortable? Or should a nation stay in an abusive relationship just to keep the peace? We are seeing a new era where the small are standing up to the mighty. Let's show the world where we stand. If you believe that Africa has the right to define its own future and choose its own brothers, I want you to go to the comments right now and type New Africa. Let's flood the section with the spirit of sovereignty and let the world know that the old ways of betrayal are coming to an end. The world was watching closely when Captain Ibrahim Traoré made his way to Ghana. This wasn't just another diplomatic visit with cameras and handshakes. This was a strategic pivot that had been months in the making. Ghana has always held a special place in the heart of the Pan-African movement. It is the land of Kwame Nkrumah, the man who first dreamed of a United States of Africa. By choosing Ghana, Traoré wasn't just finding a new port. He was aligning himself with a legacy of resistance and self-reliance. Think about the strategic map of West Africa for a second. While Ivory Coast has been the traditional powerhouse, Ghana has been quietly building a reputation for fairness and consistency. For a landlocked country like Burkina Faso, having a neighbor that respects your sovereignty is worth more than all the gold in the hills. Traore knew that to break the chains of the past, he needed a partner who wouldn't blink when the West started making threats. The 7 agreements signed between Burkina Faso and Ghana are the building blocks of a new reality. We aren't just talking about trade and transport, though those are vital. We are talking about a total integration of infrastructure, agriculture, security, and energy. Imagine a mother like Mariam, a 52-year-old woman in a small village near the border. For years, she watched her sons leave for the city because there was no work and no reliable electricity to start a small business. Because of the new energy agreements, power lines are being drawn that don't depend on the whims of colonial-era grids. For the first time, Mariam sees a future where her children can stay on their own land. This is the human side of geopolitics that the news anchors in London and Washington never tell you about. They talk about regional stability, but Mariam talks about being able to keep her family together. This is the education we all need. To see that these high-level signatures on pieces of paper actually mean bread on the table for the most vulnerable. One of the most critical parts of this new alliance is the transport and infrastructure deal. For decades, the route through Ivory Coast was the only way out, and it was a route filled with gatekeepers who took their cut at every turn. By shifting focus to Ghana's ports in Tema and Takoradi, Traore is creating a competitive alternative that breaks the monopoly. This is a masterclass in economic warfare. When you have only one door to the world, the person who holds the key is your master. But when you build a second door, you become the master of your own house. The infrastructure projects being planned, new roads and potentially a rail link, will act as the spine of the Alliance of Sahel States. This isn't just about moving cocoa or gold, it's about moving the entire economy of the Sahel toward a future that doesn't require permission from a former colonial master. But let's look even deeper at the security and agriculture agreements. In a region where terrorism has been used as a tool to destabilize governments that don't comply with Western demands, Traore and the Ghanaian leadership are choosing to stand together. They are sharing intelligence and resources to protect their borders without waiting for a foreign task force to arrive. They are proving that African soldiers can protect African soil. And in agriculture, they are working to ensure that the people of the Sahel can feed themselves. Why should a country with such fertile land import basic food from thousands of miles away? The agreements in agriculture are designed to give farmers the tools and market access they need to thrive. This is a direct threat to the global corporations that have dominated the African food market for a century. Traore is saying that the wealth of the soil belongs to the people who toil upon it. The strategic map is changing, and the colonial dollar is the biggest loser in this arrangement. As Burkina Faso moves closer to Ghana and strengthens the AES, the reliance on the CFA franc, a currency still controlled by the French treasury, begins to weaken. For our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, many of whom are financial experts and business leaders in the West, this is the moment they have been waiting for. They understand that true independence is impossible without monetary sovereignty. They see Traore's move as a calculated risk to move away from a system that devalues African labor. They are watching with bated breath because they know that if this succeeds, it provides a blueprint for every other African nation to follow. It's a terrifying prospect for those who benefit from the status quo. But for the rest of us, it's a beacon of hope. The West's reaction has been a mixture of silence and subtle sabotage. They try to frame this as Burkina Faso isolating itself. But how can you be isolated when you are building stronger ties with your neighbors? They try to warn about the risks of moving away from established partners, but they never mention the risks of staying with partners who have betrayed you for 60 years. This is where the question of justice comes back into play. Is it more risky to build a new house with a trusted friend or to stay in a burning building because you've lived there a long time? Traore has made his choice, and he is inviting the rest of the continent to join him. He is showing that the price of freedom is high, but the price of remaining a servant is even higher. This partnership is not just a dream. It is already changing lives. We are seeing faster movement of goods, more reliable energy, and a sense of pride that has been missing for a long time. It shows that when a leader has a clear vision and the courage to act, the impossible becomes possible. But there is a warning here as well. The forces that want to see Africa fail are not going to sit idly by. They will use every tool in their arsenal, sanctions, media propaganda, and internal division, to try and break this alliance. The question is, will we stand with them? Will we let the truth be buried under a mountain of lies, or will we raise our voices to support this new frontier? Before we move on to the final piece of this puzzle, the grand vision of the AES, I want to ask you something. Look at the history of the world. Great empires have always tried to keep their subjects divided. By uniting with Ghana, is Traore finally breaking that ancient spell? If you believe that a united Africa is the only way to ensure a prosperous future for the next generation, I want you to go to the comments right now and type, "Africa can do it." Let's show the world that we believe in the strength of our leaders and the resilience of our people. This is where the story shifts from a regional trade deal to a global earthquake. You see, Captain Ibrahim Traoré isn't just thinking about the next harvest or the next election. As the chairman of the Alliance of Sahel States, he is playing a game of grand strategy that has the halls of power in Washington, Paris, and Brussels sweating. The AES, comprising Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, is no longer just a military pact. It has become a symbol of a new Africa that refuses to take orders from across the ocean. When Traoré decided to embrace Ghana and sideline Ivory Coast, he was sending a message to the entire world. The era of the puppet master is over. He is building a fortress of sovereignty in the heart of the Sahel, and he's doing it by creating a self-sustaining ecosystem where African nations rely on each other instead of begging for Western aid that always comes with strings attached. But why does this make the United States so nervous? It all comes down to the one thing that keeps the Western world running, the dominance of the US dollar. For decades, the global financial system has been built on the idea that African resources, gold, uranium, cocoa, and oil, must be traded in currencies that the West controls. This allows foreign powers to manipulate exchange rates, impose sanctions, and keep African nations in a perpetual cycle of debt. By moving toward a more integrated AES and forming strategic partnerships with nations like Ghana, Traoré is laying the groundwork for an alternative financial reality. He is flirting with the idea of an African-led currency or, at the very least, a system where trade is done on African terms. If the Sahel successfully breaks away from the colonial dollar or the CFA franc, it could trigger a domino effect across the entire continent. If Africa stops propping up foreign currencies with its raw wealth, the economic shockwaves would be felt in every American household, from the price of the chocolate in your pantry to the stability of your retirement pension. This is the grand chessboard that the mainstream media tries to hide from you. They want you to think this is just a local conflict or a military junta making noise. But the truth is far more profound. We are seeing a shift where Africa is no longer just the board that others play on. Africa is finally becoming a player. While the West uses the threat of sanctions and democratic pressure to keep leaders in line, Traoré is looking at the global map and seeing new possibilities. He sees the rise of a multipolar world where Russia and China offer different types of partnerships that, for better or worse, don't involve the same colonial baggage as the old ones. However, Traoré's true genius isn't just in picking a new side, it's in trying to build a side of his own. He is telling the world that the Sahel will not be a playground for foreign interests anymore. But let's be honest about the stakes. This kind of defiance comes with a terrifying price. The emotional enemy, that lingering shadow of neocolonialism, does not give up power easily. We are already seeing the price of failure being broadcast to the world. The West warns of economic collapse, of rising inflation, and of chaos in the streets of Ouagadougou. They want the people to be afraid. They want the 40-year-old mother in the market to think that Traoré's vision will lead to her children going hungry. They want the intellectual in the diaspora to think that this is a suicide mission. The threat of orchestrated instability is very real. But as many elders in Burkina Faso will tell you, they have been living in a state of ordered poverty for 60 years. They are no longer afraid of the dark because they have never been allowed to see the light. For them, The risk of failure is nothing compared to the certainty of remaining a servant in their own home. For the African diaspora, those millions of brilliant minds living in the heart of the West, this move by Traore is a moment of profound reflection. They see the injustice of a system where a country as rich as Burkina Faso can be called poor by the very people who are extracting its gold. They see the injustice of a system where a leader is called a dictator simply because he refuses to let foreign corporations write his country's laws. Many of these diaspora members, who have lived through the struggles of the civil rights movement or the fight against apartheid, recognize this flame. They know that justice isn't given, it is taken. They are watching Traore and the AES with a mixture of pride and anxiety, knowing that if this experiment succeeds, it changes the status of black and brown people everywhere in the world. It proves that we are capable of self-governance, strategic brilliance, and total independence. The reaction from the global powers has been a calculated silence followed by quiet desperation. The U.S. has sent envoys, the EU has held emergency meetings, and the neighboring leaders who are still tied to the old system are looking on with fear. They fear that their own people will see what is happening in Burkina Faso and ask, why can't we do that too? This is why the threat of Traore is so infectious. It's not a military threat, it's a threat of a good example. If the 7 agreements with Ghana prove to be successful, if the roads are built, the lights stay on, and the borders stay safe, then the entire logic of Western supervision in Africa collapses. The master plan is simply to prove that Africa doesn't need a master. As we look toward the future, we have to ask, what is the ultimate cost of this freedom? Traore is betting the future of his nation on the belief that dignity is more valuable than a stable poverty. He is betting that the people will choose a difficult path to sovereignty over an easy path to subservience. The risks are enormous. Sanctions could tighten, food prices could rise, and the pressure from the West will only intensify. But the vision of the AES is a vision of a unified, powerful, and wealthy Africa that can finally sit at the global table as an equal. This is the new frontier, and it is being built one agreement, one port, and one defiant speech at a time. I want to end this section by asking you a question that gets to the very heart of this struggle. In a world where the powerful always try to crush the brave, can a small nation truly change the course of history? Or is the system too big to break? We are witnessing a David versus Goliath story in real time, and the whole world is holding its breath. If you stand with the vision of a free and independent Sahel, and if you believe that Ibrahim Traoré is doing what must be done for the future of his people, I want you to go to the comments and type "Stronger Together." Let's show the world that the diaspora and the continent are one heart and one mind. What we are witnessing in the Sahel is more than just a headline. It is a spiritual and political awakening. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's shift from the broken promises of the past to a new, reliable partnership with Ghana is a testament to the fact that trust is the only currency that matters in the new Africa. Through 7 historic agreements, Burkina Faso has chosen a path of dignity, infrastructure, and collective security. This isn't just a strategic victory for the Alliance of Sahel States. It is a blueprint for every nation that has ever felt the weight of a foreign boot on its neck. The master plan is no longer a secret. It is a reality being built in real time, proving that when a leader answers only to his people, the impossible becomes inevitable. As we look at the shifting maps and the nervous faces in Western capitals, we must remember that the struggle for sovereignty is never easy. The road ahead will be filled with challenges. But the foundation laid by Traoré and the AES is solid. They are moving away from a system of exploitation and toward a future of mutual respect. This is the new frontier where Africa defines its own borders, its own economy, and its own destiny. For the elders who have waited a lifetime to see this day, and for the youth who will inherit this free soil, the message is clear. The era of being a pawn is over. Africa is now a player, and the world must learn to listen. Before we go, I want to invite you to join us in a moment of solidarity. This is not just about likes or shares. It is about standing together as a global family. If you believe that the heart of Africa beats with the rhythm of freedom, and if you stand with the people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger in their quest for justice? Then let us perform a simple act of unity. Go to the comments right now and type Amen. Let it be a prayer for the protection of our leaders and a vow that we will never let the flame of independence be extinguished. If your heart beats for Africa's freedom, hit that subscribe button and stand with us on this journey. Share this video with someone who needs to hear the truth, because together, we are an unstoppable force. May God bless the people of the Sahel. May Ghana and Burkina Faso prosper in their new brotherhood. And may the spirit of a new Africa rise in every corner of the world. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next chapter of this incredible story.